Hello YouTube, I'm a Seabee vet. I was in the Seabees from 1998 to 2005 and I do Seabee videos here on YouTube. Today I'm just going to talk about how to pick a Seabee rate maybe, and also maybe some of the pros and cons of the different Seabee rates. Quick overview of the rates. So we have EAs, those are engineers aides. They generally do planning and estimating, surveying. They work in the office most of the time, drafting. And then we have builders, that's what I was. They're basically carpenters, but they also do form work, interior finish, tiling, that sort of thing. That's what they learn in A school. Then we have construction electricians, so they do maybe wiring up panels, pulling wires, following schematics, maintenance work. And then we have construction mechanics, so they maintain the Seabees fleet of construction equipment. And in A school, they learn those maintenance procedures, different equipment. They get, I think after A school, they can get ASME certified on different skills. We have equipment operators. They're driving all the Seabee equipment, everything from tractor trailers, dozers, a lot of forklifts, so they get licenses in A school. We have welders, SWs. They're basically their A school is getting the welding tickets that they have, and that's depending on where they go, they could be maybe go to amphib unit or underwater construction team, public works, or battalion. But they'll do generally metal works, maintenance and welding. And then we have utilities persons, the UTs. They're basically plumbers, but they do maintenance again, and they learn soldering pipes and plumbing, following plumbing schematics. So those are your Seabee rates there. And how to choose? Well, I'm just going to kind of talk about a couple of things you should bear in mind when choosing the Seabee rate. But before that, I'm just going to say, really stick with the rate that you want. As you probably have learned, researching online, the Seabees are not the easiest thing to get into. It's popular, so there might not be many openings for the rate you want. I recommend just waiting for an opening if you can. Why? Because first of all, it's like really hard to cross rate, and secondly, if you're going to sign a 5-year contract for a Pacific school, you really want to sign that time away of your life for a school that you want. So don't just settle for something just to ship early. I don't think it's worth it. Having said that, so how do you settle on a rate? I would suggest first look at the civilian equivalent of the training that the Navy's offering you. And that's easy now, everything's online, so you can just look at, say, if you're going to do SW, look at how much welding courses cost in, say, a community college or vocational school. Same thing with engineer's aid, utilities. These all have civilian equivalents. So you can look at those civilian programs and see what the value of the training is. So for example, me, I'm a builder. My training is not that valuable. I learned how to do things like framing, which while useful, people pick up on the job a lot of times. Whereas welding, getting your welding ticket, that's probably pretty valuable training. So that's the first thing, is consider the value of the training that you'll get from your contract in the civilian world. Second thing is think about how much you'll be working in your rate on the first enlistment. Now, if you're pretty sure that you're going to stay in the Navy for, say, a career, then that's not as important, because as you move up in rank and re-enlist, you'll get another chance to do things you like. But in your first enlistment, you're pretty sure that in your first enlistment that you're going to get out afterwards. Then depending on what A school and rate you choose, you might not have much of a chance to actually work in that rate in your first enlistment. So I'm speaking from the perspective of someone who is in battalion. Might be different for public works. A lot of people go to that. And I'm also speaking from the perspective of 1998 to 2005. So Navy's changed in that time. But builders, equipment operators, construction mechanics, and to some extent, engineering aides are, from my experience in battalion, the rates that work most of the time in their rates versus the other rates. Equipment operators is always equipment and drive. Builders, they're usually, a lot of the projects the battalion does involve concrete work of some type or nailing boards together somewhere, so that there's always a chance to use those skills. Engineering aides do a lot of the estimating and project management leading up to deployments, where you go overseas for a certain number of months and do projects. So engineer aides at least get to work in the rate, even the junior guys, during that time. And sometimes afterwards they help manage the project administrative functions. So there's not a lot of them in the Seabees. And obviously construction mechanics, they work a lot in their rate. They're always doing maintenance procedures and getting vehicles ready to, say, go out on field exercise, or checking that when you get to a new deployment, the Seabees will have equipment that's already pre-staged, so construction mechanics check it all again. So they work in their rate a lot. Other than that, some of the other rates don't in battalions. Of steel workers, you may not really get to weld at all other than A school, depending on what projects you're on. Same with construction electricians. You might pull some wires, but it really depends on what project you're on, how much work you'll do. So that's the other thing. You'll often spend time working in another rate. So construction electricians, junior ones, utility, they might all end up pouring concrete a lot of the time, or stripping forms, doing, even driving trucks and stuff. It's just what, it's the needs of the Navy. It's what they need right now. It's not like the civilian construction sector where it's really specialized. You'd only do one thing and move on. So that's something to keep in mind when you pick your rate, is will you be able to do this during your first enlistment, and does that matter? The third thing, and I'll say that kind of goes along with that, is if you do plan on getting out, and think about how valuable that skill is going to be on the outside. That's a good thing about Seabees, is a lot of the Seabee skills are valuable on the outside in the construction industry. That said, though, you kind of have to think about what you plan on doing 5 years from now if you plan on getting out. So, for example, if, say, you're going to get into project management, people do that, so you're going to get out and get into project management, then is your SWA school going to be as valuable as maybe EA might be? Or contrapositively, if maybe you're not going to even work in construction, maybe you're going to get into law enforcement or fire department. There was Seabees I served with that knew that they were going to get into the fire department or apply. So in that case, maybe a BUA school is useful. There's a lot of houses, that's something a lot of people have, and you can learn how to do maintenance on them. The things you learn in BUA school are applicable. Now, would construction mechanic be applicable? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, maybe you work on your own vehicles, but that's something to think about, is if you plan on getting out and you kind of know what you want to do, is the skill you're learning going to be useful to you when you make that transition? Now, if you're going to stay in and you know that, then it's not as big of a thing. Because once you move up in rank, the roles you have will be more not based on your A school, but based on your managerial skills and military functions. So just things to think about. And that's really all I wanted to say about the Seabee rates and picking Seabee jobs, picking rates. If you have any questions about that, the Seabees in general, I'm always happy to answer questions. Like I said, I'm a Seabee vet. I was in 1998 to 2005. and I'm now out of the Seas. I'm an engineer now. But I like the Seabees. I like doing videos about the Seabees, and I like answering questions because it's kind of a small community. So yeah, glad you were able to make it through to this part of the video if you are, and I wish you good luck in whatever you're doing, Seabee related or not. So see you on another video. Cheers.